My name is Madison Carter. I'm 35 years old and I'm a mid-level manager at a financial firm headquartered in Dallas, Texas. For nearly 10 years, I've lived in the fast-paced rhythm of work, where every number, every decision must be precise. From the outside, people often say I'm the model of a modern woman, independent, successful, steadily rising. But only I know what hides behind the office lights at 8 p.m., solitary dinners and holidays spent in silence. After graduating from the University of Michigan, I was recruited straight into a major investment bank. Through hard work and a relentless desire to prove myself, I climbed the ladder to where I am now. But in exchange, I carry an unspoken emptiness. I once had a college boyfriend, but that ended quickly when I chose my job over moving to another state with him. Since then, love has felt like a luxury, something I believed wasn't meant for me. That changed one evening 2 years ago when Ashley, my best friend from college, dragged me to a coworker's birthday party. "Madison, if you don't open up, you're gonna end up an old spinster with 5 cats," she said, pulling me through the crowd. I just chuckled, planning to sip a glass of wine and quietly sneak out. But that night, I met Lucas Bennett. He was standing by the bar, wearing a dark blue shirt, holding a glass of whiskey. His face had a mature charm, but it was his warm, kind eyes that caught my attention. Lucas was 3 years older than me, a civil engineer, and probably the first man who ever truly made me feel heard. As we started talking, time seemed to pause. He didn't ask how much I earned or act surprised that I was still single. Instead, he told me about the bridges he'd designed and how he liked to bake bread every Sunday morning. "I like smart women," Lucas said, his voice deep and firm, "but I admire them even more when they still keep their softness." I blushed and had to turn away. Somehow, under the golden light and soft music, I no longer felt the need to hide my fatigue or emotional scars. After that night, we texted for a few days and then went out to dinner. The dates weren't extravagant, but they were filled with laughter and a quiet sense of safety. Lucas wasn't the overly romantic type, but he always noticed the little things. A scarf when the weather turned cold, a container of chicken soup left at my door when I had a cold. About 6 months later, Lucas proposed. I cried, not because I was shocked, but because I never imagined someone could see me so clearly and still choose to stay. We had a small, simple wedding, just close family and a few friends. I entered the marriage full of hope, believing that this time I wouldn't be alone. But life isn't a fairy tale, and sometimes love is just a sweet mask hiding a much harsher truth. After the wedding, Lucas moved in with me in my 2-bedroom apartment in the Lakewood area of Dallas, the same place I'd called home for the past 7 years. Married life began gently, almost too good to be true. Lucas never forgot to clean up after dinner, always waited for me to have breakfast together, and whenever I was stressed with work, he'd silently make me a hot cocoa and leave it by my laptop without saying a word. I started to believe I was truly lucky, that maybe, after all those years of being alone and guarded, I had finally found someone to lean on. 3 months after the wedding, Lucas suggested we visit his parents in Santa Fe, New Mexico. "You'll love them," he said. "My mom is sweet and my dad is a riot." That trip happened in early April. I still remember walking into their cream-colored house with a wooden fence draped in ivy. My mother-in-law ran out and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, showering me with compliments. Walter, my father-in-law, laughed heartily and winked at Lucas, saying, "Didn't think you had it in you to land a girl like this." I smiled, slightly embarrassed, but felt surprisingly warm inside. That evening, we all sat around a long wooden table, eating spicy roasted chicken, a local favorite. The atmosphere was cheerful and relaxed. When I talked about my job at the financial firm, Claire placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "A woman who has a career and still takes care of family is truly rare." Walter nodded. "Men these days need to learn from you." I let out a quiet sigh of relief. I'd been afraid they might disapprove of me continuing to work full-time after marriage, especially since I often worked late. But no, they didn't just accept it. They seemed proud. Lucas always said, I love you because you're exactly who you are. Don't ever change. A week later, when we returned to Dallas, I felt as though I had passed some invisible test and gained not just a husband, but a whole new, kind-hearted family. Everything felt perfect until Lucas began bringing up the idea of moving to Santa Fe to live with his parents. At first, I thought he was just musing aloud, but gradually he mentioned it more seriously. Mom's been getting dizzy a lot lately, and Dad's knees are getting worse. They're starting to need us, Maddie. I hesitated. But my work is here. Lucas held my hand. I know. But you're good at what you do. You could work remotely for a few months and then we'll figure it out. Your company has a flexible policy, right? It was true that my company supported remote work, but no one had ever done it for more than 3 months. I told him I'd consider it. But before I could make a decision, I unexpectedly received an email from the regional director, a person who rarely reached out personally, announcing that I had been selected to join a 6-month executive leadership program, which could open up a promotion opportunity in the coming year. It was the opportunity I had been waiting for over the past 3 years. I told Lucas about it, unable to hide my excitement, but instead of being happy for me, he went silent. You're not thinking about moving anymore, are you? He asked, his voice growing low. I hesitated. This is such a rare chance, Lucas. I think I should stay in Dallas a while longer. He only nodded, saying nothing else, but from that moment on, I felt the distance between us begin to grow. A vague coldness creeping into every meal, every conversation. Lucas remained gentle, still acted like he cared, but his eyes started to drift away whenever I talked about work, and the number of nights he came home late began to increase. I kept telling myself it was just a transitional phase. Every couple goes through a rough patch, right? But there was one truth I couldn't ignore. Ever since I said no to moving to Santa Fe, Lucas hadn't been the same man I fell in love with. About 2 months after I declined the idea of relocating to Santa Fe, Lucas brought it up again. But this time, he didn't talk about me leaving my job or dropping the leadership program. Instead, he proposed a different solution. I've got an idea, Lucas said, as he cleared a stack of papers from the dining table and looked at me with expectant eyes. Let's renovate my parents' house into a duplex, one side for them, the other for us. That way I can be close to them and you can still work remotely if needed. It's a win-win. I looked up from my laptop, a bit surprised by how calmly he was presenting it. Their house is in the middle of the New Mexico desert. It's over 900 miles from my main office, Lucas. I know, but if we invest in renovations, I think the property will really go up in value. Besides, my parents are getting older. Every time something happens, it's a plane ride away. It's not easy. I went quiet, thinking it through. Lucas wasn't being unreasonable. On paper, the idea sounded like a fair compromise, but something in my gut felt uneasy. I'll think about it, I replied, emphasizing each word. A week later, he sent me a detailed renovation plan along with architectural drawings designed by one of his colleagues. The old 2-story house was reimagined as a stylish duplex with a shared entryway and an open backyard. I couldn't deny it. The design was beautiful. The estimated cost was around $120,000. Not a small number, but still within reach if I pooled together my savings and part of my expected year-end bonus. What stunned me, though, was what Lucas said next, as casually as if he were asking for more salad. By the way, if you can, could you cover the cost up front? I'll pay you back over time. I froze. You want me to pay for the whole thing? Lucas averted his eyes slightly. I haven't told you everything. Actually, my parents are in a bit of debt. Quite a bit, actually. I set my glass of water down and narrowed my eyes. How much is quite a bit? He hesitated. About $140,000. I was speechless for a few seconds. It felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water straight into my face. Lucas, are you telling me your parents are over 100 grand in debt and I've never heard a word about it, and now you want me to pay for the house renovation and take on that debt too? He stammered, clearly flustered. I know, it's a lot too sudden, but they truly can't manage it anymore. The interest keeps piling up, you know how it is. They're living on retirement income, and I… And you what? I looked him square in the eye. He swallowed hard. I don't make enough to handle it all. I let out a dry laugh, not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe the situation I was in. Then why didn't you ever mention your family's debt before we got married? Lucas lowered his head. I was afraid you'd leave me. Silence stretched between us like a bottomless pit. I never imagined the man I had chosen could hide something so big from me, and then, after that, place the entire burden on my shoulders with sweet words and pleading eyes. Madison, I don't want to lose you. You're the only one who can help right now. I stepped away from the table and walked toward the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I'm not a stingy person. If someone truly needs help, I can help, but the way Lucas presented it, not as a request but as a decision already made my skin crawl. I need time to think, I said, not turning back. Lucas came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. No matter what you decide, I still love you. Ugh. I didn't answer. Because in that moment, for the first time since we got married, I started asking myself, how much of this love is real and how much is just a convenient excuse when life gets tough? It took me nearly 2 weeks to think it through. It was a tense period with numbers circling in my head like the ticking of a debt bomb about to go off. $120,000 for renovations. $140,000 in unpaid debt from his parents. Altogether nearly $250,000, and Lucas, the man I called my husband, had nothing to offer but love and empty promises. I asked myself, if it were for someone else, would I say yes? But in the end, I looked at myself in the mirror, in the cozy bedroom where we had once chosen curtains together, and I knew the answer. I was too in love with him. I couldn't just walk away that easily, not when my heart still wanted to believe that this love was worth the sacrifice. Even if it hurt, even if I was angry, I still wanted to hold on to something good. So I agreed. I set 2 conditions. First, the house, after renovations, had to be in my name because I was the one paying. Second, all debt payments had to be tracked through a separate account that I controlled. Lucas agreed immediately, even thanking me so emotionally he almost choked on his words. I wasn't sure if he was touched by my love or relieved that he'd escaped a financial disaster without having to sell his pride. We flew to Santa Fe in early the following month to start the project. The old house, with its cracked walls and sagging roof, became a promising new undertaking. I hired a top-rated construction team in the area and supervised every phase, from plumbing and wiring to furniture and finishes. Every weekend I showed up. Even when exhausted, I still felt like I was building something meaningful. Not just a house, but a future, a hope. I pulled nearly all of my savings from 12 years of working, plus a portion of my recent leadership bonus to start paying off his parents' debt. To avoid any mismanagement, I paid directly to the creditors through the bank and kept every single receipt. No one questioned me, probably because they knew without me, everything would collapse. His parents often called to say thank you. Claire even cried a few times when I told her a portion of the debt had been cleared. "You're a blessing from heaven," she said. "I never thought Lucas would marry someone like you." Those words warmed me and also unsettled me. Something felt off, as if they admired a wallet, not a person. And Lucas, he remained as gentle as ever, still held my hand on walks around the neighborhood, still called me the strongest woman I've ever known, but he never touched a single payment. One time I asked, "Can you chip in from your salary?" And he replied, "I'm still drowning in credit card debt." I didn't ask again, I just took note. A year passed. I had paid off nearly $90,000 out of the $140,000. The house was almost finished, so beautiful that when my friends saw photos, they joked, "If you ever quit finance, you should become an architect." But the closer we got to the stable ending, the more I felt a small crack forming in my heart, one no one could see but me. I started asking myself, am I building a nest for both of us, or just making a cozy bed for someone else to enjoy? Then one day, while Lucas was watching TV, I decided to test something simple. I was thinking, after we finish paying off the debt, maybe we could start saving for that Europe trip you promised on our wedding day. Lucas chuckled, then said in a half-joking, half-serious tone, "Heath, what money? You're pretty tapped out after all this." I laughed with him, but inside, I went cold. He was right. I didn't have much money left anymore. But what I lost wasn't just money. It was the belief that love is about sharing, not one-sided sacrifice. I didn't know how much longer I could endure, but I did know one thing. When you start to feel lonely in the very house you built yourself, the end can't be far off. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who snoops. But sometimes the truth only comes to those brave enough to stand behind a door, left slightly ajar. It was a Saturday afternoon at the end of March. I came back to Santa Fe earlier than planned after attending a finance conference in Albuquerque. I was going to call ahead, but I thought I'd surprise Lucas with a nice dinner. I even bought his favorite wine, a bottle of Cabernet from Sonoma. When I got there, I saw Lucas's car already parked in the driveway. I quietly unlocked the door with my own key, ready to step inside, but then I heard voices coming from the living room. It was Claire, my mother-in-law, and then Walter too. Both of them were talking animatedly with Lucas. I was about to walk in like usual, but then a mocking laugh stopped me in my tracks. "That boy played his cards just right," Walter said. "He landed the one with money, and she's dropping over $100,000 to fix up the house for us. I swear, if I were him, I would have married her too." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Claire chimed in, "He's unbelievably lucky. We're drowning in debt, and that girl's smart but so naive. Classic I can carry the world type." Lucas laughed. "Honestly, I had my eye on her from the start. I did my homework. Senior manager at an investment firm, single, owns a house in Dallas, no family ties. A jackpot I couldn't pass up." Claire clapped her hands. "That's my boy," Walter added. "Once she finishes paying off the debt and the house is done, you'll be free. A girl like that won't last long in Santa Fe anyway." Lucas replied, his tone lower this time, like he was laying out a plan. "I think so too. Once she's done paying, maybe in a few more months, I'll break up with her gently. Or, if she's still clueless, I'll tell her to move back to Dallas while I stay to care for you guys. Then I'll—" Claire cut in, "Live your free life, right?" All three of them laughed, a long, smug laugh, as if they had just won a chess match where I was the pawn they sacrificed. I don't know how long I stood there. My hands were shaking. The wine bottle slipped from my grip and shattered on the floor with a sharp crash, breaking the cruel laughter into silence. Everything went still. I pushed the door open. My face had lost all color. Lucas jumped up, trying to force a smile. "Maddie, when did you get home? Why didn't you call?" I looked straight into his eyes, expressionless. "Long enough to hear everything." Walter flushed red. Claire scrambled to yank off her apron, as if that could somehow hide the shame of being exposed. "Madison, let me explain." I raised a hand. "Don't bother." Lucas stepped toward me, trying to look regretful. "I'm sorry. We were just joking around. You know how my family is. We tease like that." I clenched my jaw. "You called me a jackpot. Lucas. That's your idea of a joke?" He lowered his head, speechless. I turned and walked upstairs, my heart heavy. But that very night, lying alone in the bed that used to be our haven, I knew one thing for sure. This marriage was beyond saving. The next morning, I got up early. Without saying a word to anyone, I drove straight back to Dallas. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I just thought about every dollar I had poured into that family, every blueprint I had signed off on, every sleepless night I had worked twice as hard to pay off debts for people who never truly loved me. But that was going to change. I wouldn't be a piece on their game board another second. They thought I was just the woman who carries everything, but they forgot one crucial truth. I don't just know how to sacrifice, I know how to end things. I returned to Dallas on a gray Sunday morning, my heart colder than the weather outside. I had heard it all. I had seen the real faces behind the ones who used to smile at me across the dinner table every weekend. And now, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I chose silence. I understood that if I reacted now, I'd lose everything. They were used to me being the forgiving, soft-hearted one. But I wasn't the Madison they thought I was anymore. I began my revenge in the gentlest way possible, by pretending I knew nothing. Lucas called me that afternoon just as I got home. He sounded worried, asking why I had left without saying anything. I'd told him I was tired, needed a few days off, and had to focus on a new project. He paused, then said softly, "I'm sorry if anything from yesterday upset you." I pretended to smile. "Not at all. I'm fine." And I played that role flawlessly for the next 2 months. Still chatting as usual, still sending the debt payments on time, even discussing new curtain options for the nearly finished house. I took care of every detail to preserve the image they wanted to see. A devoted Madison, loving wife, caring daughter-in-law. But at the same time, I quietly opened a secondary bank account under the name of my personal investment company I'd registered last year. From then on, I began withdrawing the loan payments gradually, no longer sending them directly to the lender. I continued sending receipts to Lucas, still told him the transfers were made, but in reality, I only paid a small portion. The remaining balance, I left untouched. I knew the banking system wouldn't raise a fuss as long as I kept making regular, albeit smaller payments. That bought me time. When the remaining amount hit $90,000, I decided it was time to strike. One evening, after cooking Lucas's favorite stew, I sat across from him in the living room. "I have good news," I began. He looked up, a flicker of caution in his eyes. I guessed he was afraid I'd ask to see the account statements. "I've paid off your parents' debt." Lucas held his breath. "You... really?" I nodded. I pulled from my savings and last year's investments. I thought it was time to get it over with, for everyone's peace of mind. His eyes lit up. Though he tried to hide it, I could see the excitement in every move he made. He scooted closer, hugged me, and whispered, "You're an angel." I just smiled, because I knew real angels never deceive. 2 days later, my in-laws called, crying with gratitude. Claire even said she would name one of her pie recipes the Madison Pie in my honor. The whole family celebrated like they'd hit the jackpot. I kept up the act perfectly. But behind the scenes, I had already contacted a private lawyer in Dallas, a college friend who now worked at a well-known firm. I handed over all the evidence. Transfer receipts, Lucas's confirmation emails, house designs in my name, and, most importantly, a secret audio recording from that day in Santa Fe. "I don't want to blow this up," I said. "I just want what I deserve." The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "Do you have a plan?" I nodded. "I want a divorce, and I want every single penny I put in back." In the following days, I lived a double life. The perfect wife by day and the woman typing emails to lawyers at night, reviewing bills, digging through property documents. Then, one Monday morning like any other, I woke up feeling something new. I was ready. Ready to end the charade. Ready to pull the curtain down and show the three people behind the spotlight that not every loving person is doomed to be used forever. I was never naive enough to believe that liars would suddenly grow a conscience just because they were forgiven. But still, I hadn't expected Lucas to reveal his true colors so shamelessly. It began on a Friday afternoon. I had just finished a meeting when I got his text. I want to have a serious talk tonight about our future. I didn't respond. A part of me already knew that serious talk wouldn't be pretty. That evening, Lucas sat across from me in the kitchen I had designed myself. He set his wineglass down and leaned back as if this was no big deal. "Madison," he started, "I think it's time we ended this." I narrowed my eyes, showing no surprise. "Ended what?" "This marriage," Lucas said, his voice light as a breeze. "I've fallen in love with someone else." I sat still, didn't blink, didn't cry, didn't ask why, because deep down, I had known for a long time. Lucas looked at me like he was expecting an emotional outburst, but when I stayed silent, he clicked his tongue. "She's a lawyer, younger than you, independent, doesn't ask for much, and most importantly, she doesn't control me like you do." I let out a soft laugh. "I control you? You always calculate everything, make me sign documents, route payments through you, the house is in your name. You make me feel like a freeloader." "Because you are a freeloader." That line turned Lucas's face beet red. He shot up from his seat but quickly sat back down, as if afraid of losing face. "Anyway," Lucas continued after a brief silence, "I want a divorce. And to make things easier, I think you should move out of my parents' house. You can go back to Dallas, or if you want to stay—" I lifted my head. "Then what?" "Then you can live with my parents, in the old side of the house, as long as you help them out a little, cooking, cleaning, taking care of Walter since he's getting weaker." I let out a quiet laugh, but this time it was the kind that chilled the air to the bone. "So, you want me to get divorced, move out of the newly built part of the house that I paid for, live in the old section and be your family's maid, while you live with your new girlfriend in the part I funded?" Lucas didn't respond, but his eyes said it all. Just then, the living room door opened. Claire and Walter walked in, clearly having heard everything, but instead of looking ashamed or stopping their son, Claire simply sighed. "Madison, don't blame Lucas. You can't predict what happens in love." I turned to look at her. "And what about asking me to be the maid? Was that predictable too?" Walter chimed in. "Well, we could all live peacefully if you were just a bit more reasonable. This house belongs to our family, no matter whose name is on it." I went quiet for a few seconds. Then I stood up and walked slowly to the desk by the window. I opened a drawer and pulled out a neatly clipped set of documents. I placed them in front of Lucas. "Do you know what this is?" He flipped through the first page, and his expression changed the moment he read the line. "Property ownership certificate, sole owner, Madison Carter." I spoke clearly, every word deliberate. "This house you're sitting in, every brick, every nail, every blueprint is under my name. I'm the one who paid $160,000 to rebuild it, and if you think you can kick me out, I'm afraid you've just kicked yourself out first." Lucas went pale. You can't do this." "Oh, I not only can," I said in a low voice, "I already did." Claire jumped in, losing her composure for the first time. "You can't throw this whole family out. You're the daughter-in-law. You should have some decency." I turned to her, my eyes like ice. "Daughter-in-law? You stood there and watched your son ask for a divorce so he could live with another woman while planning to make me your servant. You've got the wrong woman." Lucas grabbed my hand, his voice trembling. "Madison, let's not make this ugly. We can still fix things." I pulled my hand away from him. "No, Lucas, this was over the night you laughed about scoring a great deal. I'm not some investment. I'm a person." I walked out of the room, leaving behind 3 people frozen in silence in a house they thought belonged to them. But the game was only just beginning. The next morning, I walked out of the bedroom with the calm of someone who had seen the deepest level of hurt and learned how to turn it into power. Lucas was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. His parents were pretending nothing had happened, trying to keep up a perfect family vibe with clinking utensils and small talk about the weather. I pulled out a chair and sat down, placing a tidy brown folder on the table in front of them. "These are the divorce papers," I said, my voice so composed it surprised even me. Lucas looked up, color draining from his face. "Madison, I thought we could talk this through." "I'm not here to negotiate anymore," I cut in. "Everything I needed to say I said last night. Now, we've reached the end." I turned to Claire and Walter. "I'll have my attorney send an official notice to all three of you requesting repayment of the $90,000 still outstanding from the debt I helped this family shoulder." Walter was speechless, and Claire turned pale. "You? What are you saying? You told us the debt was paid off." I smiled. "I never said it was fully paid. I said I decided to wrap up that debt. The portion I paid was voluntary. The rest, from now on, is yours." Lucas shouted, "You can't do this! You told me you handled everything." I pulled out my phone and played back a voice message. My voice saying, "I've decided to cover the remaining amount within my capacity. I've endured enough. From now on, the rest of the debt is for the family to manage." I hit pause. "Be careful with how you interpret things, Lucas. In law, every word can define your future." Lucas stood and slammed his hand on the table. "You're playing dirty!" I stared him straight in the eye. "No, Lucas. I just stopped being naive." I opened the divorce folder and flipped to the financial section. "I'm also demanding monthly alimony for 2 years. Because I was the sole financial contributor to this marriage. You have no stable income, added nothing to our shared assets, and, on top of that, caused me financial loss. The court will side with me." He scoffed. "You're not going to win. Courts don't favor schemers." I laid another folder on the table. "This is proof of infidelity. Photos of you and your young lawyer girlfriend vacationing in Sedona. I've got timestamps, hotel receipts, and lobby camera footage. I've also filed a civil suit for alienation of affection." Lucas's face drained of color. "If she finds out, she'll leave me." I smiled. "Let's hope she has a thing for broke men with lawsuits." Walter spoke up, voice pleading. "Madison, we're family. Let's work this out slowly." I looked directly at him. "We were never a family. Family doesn't call each other a good catch. Family doesn't plan to toss someone out after draining their bank account." I stood, gathered the documents, and delivered the final blow. "I'm selling this house, and since it's under my name, you all have 30 days to move out. If not, my lawyer will handle the rest." Lucas collapsed back into his chair, head in his hands. Claire began muttering prayers, and Walter said nothing, just stared out the window, as if waiting for the sky to fall and save them. As for me, I walked out of that kitchen, proud, composed, and freer than I had ever felt. Because for the first time in years, I knew I was doing the right thing. Not out of anger, but because I chose to stand up for myself. 40 days later, the house that had once been the pride of Lucas's family sold successfully for $200,000. Thanks to its prime location in Santa Fe and its fresh modern duplex design, it attracted young families looking for privacy and community. I ran the numbers carefully. After subtracting $160,000 in renovation costs and the debt I had temporarily covered, I walked away with a net gain of $40,000. Not to mention recouping the costs of the furnishings sold with the house. But that was just the beginning of what I call my gentle justice. Under the divorce settlement handled by my attorney, Lucas was legally obligated to pay monthly spousal support for 2 years, since I was the sole creator of marital assets and suffered clear financial damages. In addition, his girlfriend, the young attorney, after receiving my civil suit for destroying a lawful marriage, wired a $15,000 settlement out of court to protect her professional record. Claire and Walter weren't as lucky. With every invoice, bank statement, and proof I had, I forced them to pay back $25,000, money I had used to cover their debts without any legal document labeling it a gift. They argued, they pleaded, they sent letters, but the law doesn't run on emotions, and for the first time in my life, I let fairness speak louder than my heart. In total, beyond the house sale, I recovered more than $80,000 from my ex-husband, his mistress, and his parents. The same people who once thought I was just a money-printing woman with a soft heart. Life afterward wasn't instantly perfect, but it was real, and that was enough to make me breathe easier. I moved back to Dallas, into a small, charming penthouse apartment in Uptown. It wasn't far from the office, had a sunlit balcony, and a clay pot holding a plant I named Freedom. I returned to work with a new mindset. One day, the head of HR pulled me aside and said, "Madison, I've never seen you this sharp. Would you like to join the Strategic Leadership Board?" I nodded, because for the first time, I knew I deserved everything coming my way, not because I endured, but because I overcame. In the evenings, I often sat down to write in my journal, not to complain, but to record every small lesson. That love doesn't mean silently bearing the weight. That someone truly trustworthy will never leave you to face the world alone, especially their own world. That kindness is valuable, but clarity is far more powerful. One afternoon, I walked past Clyde Warren Park and saw an elderly couple sitting together, hand in hand. They weren't speaking, just watching the sunset. I smiled. I no longer held resentment toward Lucas, nor did I feel pain thinking about Santa Fe. What they did doesn't define me, it only proves I'm stronger than they ever imagined. I was once the woman who loved deeply, trusted blindly, and was betrayed to the core. But now, I'm Madison Carter, the woman who turned failure into power, loss into leverage, and betrayal into a launchpad to rise higher than ever before. My story isn't just about a divorce. It's a journey of awakening. From a woman who gave her all to love, I learned to love myself first. Being used, betrayed, and dismissed didn't break me, it sharpened me. In real life, kindness is often mistaken for weakness, but if you stand up at the right time, you can turn loss into strength. I didn't lose anything, I just found myself again. What do you think about Madison's decision? Was she too strong, or was it exactly what she needed to protect herself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional stories about family and life.